I just finished week 1 of The Artist's Way, which is a 12-week course in discovering and recovering your creative self. And at the end of each week, there's a check-in to kind of go over how the week went, if there are any blockers, things that are still blocking your creativity. So I'm going to record that on video, and I hope that it will be insightful or interesting to look back on in the future. Week 1 is called Recovering a Sense of Safety. It's basically establishing the basics of your creative self so that you kind of shed the fears that can come with it, or that can come with tapping into your creative self. Each week there's a little bit of reading. It's like a few pages, but I found the reading so insightful this week. It talks about the shadow artists within us, like the artistic part of us that we decided to tuck away in order to fit someone else's expectations, fit society's expectation or path. And it kind of prompts you to look back at your child self, because we're all so creative and artistic when we're children, when we're not told that we have to focus on other things. And so you have to ask yourself, what did you want to do before you were told what to do or what to be? And I made a list of all the jobs that I wanted to have when I was a kid. They're all so gay. I wanted to be a florist, an architect, I wanted to make chocolate, I wanted to be a perfumer or a fashion designer, things that are very just creative. I found the term shadow artists very interesting. Even though now my career is more creative and artistic, I still always feel like I am not truly an artist, or I'm not artist enough almost. In the part of the reading, it says, unable to recognize that they themselves may possess the creativity they so admire, shadow artists often date or marry people who actively pursue the art career they themselves secretly long for. And I relate to that. I have dated people in the arts or like artists, and I was always super interested in their art and supportive and like admiring of it, but it's just interesting to read it and be like, oh, maybe I was doing that because I was trying to tap into creativity through someone else because I didn't feel like I was good enough for it. And that sentence killed me. Shadow artists are gravitating to their rightful tribe, but cannot yet claim their birthright. Shadow artists often choose shadow careers, those close to the desired art, even parallel to it, but not the art itself. I feel like it's a great basis to start on for the first week, because it's basically telling you, like, we see you, you want to do art, but you for some reason decided or were told that you weren't good enough to do it. You have to allow yourself to be an artist, and even if that means being bad and being a bad artist, at least let it out. Like, let it out of you. It's in you. Then you go into your enemy within, so your core negative beliefs, those things that you tell yourself and that hinder your own creativity and work and talent. And then the flip side is the affirmations. But let me go through the exercises. There's basically tasks every week, and the check-in, the first question is, how many days this week did you do your morning pages? Morning pages are just every morning, first thing in the morning, you sit down and you do a stream of consciousness for 3 pages. You can write about anything and everything, but you just have to write. I did it every day this week, so 7 times, and I was so floored by the experience, to be honest. I knew how beneficial journaling could be because I've done it in the past and I think it's a great habit, but I feel like the format of giving yourself 3 pages is so spot on, and I don't know how the author came to that, but 3 pages to me has been so perfect because I start journaling basically about what my thoughts are that morning. Was it the thing I did before, a dream I had, something that I'm anxious about that day? And it feels very surface level at first, and I'm like, what am I even writing this for? And by the time I get to the end of the second page, or maybe like the beginning of the second page, it starts getting so deep, and like you can tell that those thoughts, like the ramification of the thoughts is crazy. Every day I had something super insightful come out of me that I would not have thought of before. Memories coming back from my childhood, things that I've suppressed. It's been really, really crazy. And you're not supposed to look back at your morning pages. She says, like, tuck them away and don't look back at them. I find it difficult just because I can tell that there are some insightful things here, but I'm not reading through them yet. I think maybe I'll allow myself to read through them at the end of the course. That's a lot of reading. We'll see. But the morning pages have been really, really, really cool. There's a bunch of other tasks because this week is about your inner artist and unpacking the blocks that you've had from your childhood. It's a lot of time traveling is what she calls it. One of the exercises was listing 3 enemies of your creative self-worth. And it's not enemies in like someone wanted to hurt you or someone had bad intentions, but it's someone in your life that had an influence and something that they did or said changed you and like had a negative impact on your creativity. And I was really reluctant to do this exercise because if I think back on my childhood, I can't pinpoint, or I couldn't at the time pinpoint, negative influences, because I feel like I was very privileged growing up. I had a lot of support. I had people who celebrated me and celebrated creativity and encouraged me to be creative. Like, my parents were always so eager for me to tap into creativity. There was never a question. So thinking about this exercise, I was like, no one was an enemy. No one tried to tell me being creative was bad. But I think stripping the idea that the intention has to be negative and just looking at the effect, I was able to kind of dig and find sources of my core negative beliefs. And it's hard to even say out loud because it feels like I'm blaming these people for something. But I just think, fuck it. And I started with 3, but throughout the week, you kind of start remembering more and you add more. I'm talking too much. The first one, and that made me sad, but my grandpa, who has passed away, and I had a great relationship with my grandpa. I loved him so much, and he was always so proud of me and supportive. But he was also from a different generation and different mindset, and he was truly a pragmatic man. Pragmatic. And he wished the best for me. And as a child, I was always very studious. I loved school. I was getting good grades. And I think he just loved that specific path for me so much and was so proud of it that in return, it kind of made any other option and any other path, especially the creative ones or the ones that were a little bit out of the box, feel less than. And so I think I internalized a lot of that. I have some childhood friends from France that are also from a different culture. I think French culture, especially in the more affluent communities, teaches you to prioritize certain things. And that kept coming back for me this week. It's always about that specific path that was drawn out for me and that I was set on very early on because I was doing so good in school. I got admitted to amazing schools. I chose to go to Berkeley and studied economics and graduated with honors on the dean's list. Moved to New York City to work in management consulting in financial services on Wall Street. It was just that beautiful, clean-cut, laid out for you path that sounds so perfect. And it's like the idea that we have about success. And so going back to those enemies of self-worth, we call them creative monsters too. I have some childhood friends from France that when I decided to quit my job in consulting, or whenever I was doing something that was out of that path and more creative, no one ever told me that's a bad idea. But you notice the way people question it. And then working through it, I realized that it's never that they thought I was a bad artist or that I wasn't creative or talented enough. It's just that they didn't want me to be an artist because they saw something else for me to do. And the whole point about identifying these creative monsters is to understand what are the blockers, what are those things that you tell yourself that prevent you from unleashing your full creative self. I wrote down some of those blurts, we call them. I'm gonna read a couple. They're very personal, but you are not talented enough. You are not liked enough. You are not supported enough. You're not making enough money to support yourself. One of the exercises is to turn these blurts into positive affirmations. Things that if you think about it already exist within yourself, but there's a little voice in your head that tells you no, that's not true whenever you say them out loud. So some of my affirmations were like, I, Noah, am talented in many ways. I, Noah, am supported and believed in by many people. I, Noah, am abundant and able to make enough money to sustain my life. And I cringe so hard reading these things out loud, but I feel like that's part of the process and it's difficult. There's a flip side exercise which I obviously gravitated towards, which is listing your 3 old champions of your creative self-worth. And I already said I feel like I had a lot of champions growing up. I was very, very fortunate. My parents were a huge one, but for the exercise I tried to dig deep into my memories, and it's crazy. People from my childhood that I do not remember on a daily basis popped up in my head so obviously and naturally, and I was able to pinpoint what in them made me feel so validated and made me want to be more creative and to believe in myself, because I think I was so into school and that was such a big part of my validation growing up. Most of them are teachers, but it's just so interesting that they're the teachers that I wrote, because I don't, if I think about my teachers, they're not. Anyway, the first one, his name, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about him because I never let myself understand the impact this man had on me. He was my music teacher in middle school. I wrote the reasons why. he was gay. He was gay, and at the time, it was just not a thing, especially not in a public school. He was out, and he was proud, and he didn't care, and he was being himself. And I was in the closet. Obviously, I didn't even know I was queer at the time. Kids are ruthless, and people around the school were bullying him, and he was young and he was handsome, and he like never took anyone's shit, but you could tell people were joking. The little boys were making fun of him for being feminine or gay, or I don't even know if I knew what that was at the time, but he didn't care. And something that makes me super emotional is that I think he saw it in me. I think he knew, and even though I never let him have that bond with me, and that's something I regret today. I never let myself get close to him, and I think subconsciously it's because he was out and proud, and I was maybe worried that it was I was trying to not be that. And he never said anything to me, but the way he treated me just made me, like, now looking back, makes me feel like he saw it and, like, kept it as a secret for me, but he was always championing me. God. So yeah, looking back, I'm, like, super grateful that I had an example like this. I will always remember one day he came to school after getting beat up, and it's only rumors, he never addressed anything, but apparently he got beat up with his partner or for being gay, and he came to school the day after and kept it going. And yeah, I think he's just a really impressive man. And one of the other exercises is to write a letter to one of your champions. I started writing my letter to him, but I didn't finish. I just felt like I needed to think it through more, because I want him to know the impact that he had in, like, showing me that it was okay. I feel like that little secret and the way he protected it, and it's just very valuable to me. So he's one of them. The second one, her name is Madame Sumney. She was my English teacher. She was super open-minded. She was not afraid to do or say crazy things, but she was also super respected by the other teachers and by kids. She wasn't, like, strict, but people wanted to respect her, and she was so kind and open and gentle and loving, but no one was gonna fuck with her, and I just loved that. She believed in me so hard, and she was so vocal about it. When I wanted to study abroad, which is later down the road, like in high school, I reached back out to her because I knew that she believed in travel, in stepping out of your community and your comfort zone and following your dream. And she wrote one of my letters of recommendations that got me into all my US schools, and it was beautiful. As a part of the exercise, I went back and read it, and I was sobbing. And she had dreams. She had a beautiful family. I just admired her a lot. And then the third one that I wrote about, he was a high school teacher. He was also very vocal about what he believed I had. I'm not sure about his sexuality, and because in high school I wasn't out, I don't think I was trying to close that out. But he was kind of feminine presenting and, like, proper and super clean. I think he was straight, but just very well spoken and educated and had values, and he was firm, but like in a way that made him respected, but also so kind. And he's not my type physically, but thinking back about it, I'm like, did I gravitate towards him so much because I had a little bit of a crush on him? I don't know. Like, not sexual at all, but like, yeah, I just admired him a lot. And then a few others that came to mind was this tutor that I had to understand the process to apply to American schools. One of my Berkeley teachers, she was my public relations teacher. Her name is Diane Sharp. And even after I graduated, I stayed in touch with her, and we would email back and forth, and I'd give her updates about my life in New York and what she was up to. And she was so cool. She was like the perfect mix of creativity and business savviness and acumen. And I just admired her a lot. I think I'm gonna write her a letter as well. And then this one's kind of random. Sal's mom, she was just always so supportive, and I just saw her as a great figure of encouragement in my life. Obviously my parents, my grandma, like I have so many people, but this was a really cool exercise. And another thing that you do out of these people or this hall of champions is write down compliments or like things that they told you that made you feel validated in your creativity, almost like your affirmations, but because it comes from someone else, it's easier to believe, which is kind of messed up, but it does work. So I look back at the emails and letters that I had from some of them and wrote some of those things, and it's like, I could cry. Thank you for bringing a smile to my face. And these are teachers, like, you don't need to be telling me all that, but it's so nice. You make the best out of it. It's one of your best qualities. Honestly, you seem to always see the silver lining. Bravo pour ton incroyable parcours qui ne fait que commencer. A radiant personality. I don't know what it is about it. I think because they're in positions of power or things that I admired and values that I hold close to my heart, reading these things from them feels so warm and so validating. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that I had such great mentors in my life. Anyway, next exercise was imaginary lives, and I think that was one of my favorites. It's basically like it says 5. If you had 5 other lives to lead, what would you be doing in each one of them? And I wrote 10 because I couldn't stop. Some of them are things that I wanted to do as a kid and that I don't really want to do anymore. Some of them are things that I dream of doing but I don't let myself do. And I think this journey or this course might help me tap into them more. So on top of the ones that I had as a child, like chocolate maker, florist, etc., I have actor, I have pop star, like singer. And these two kind of go hand in hand, and I know why I never let myself do it. It's because of that blur. I am not talented enough. And it's also because I compare myself to others so much, and I can see so much talent in others, and I think I'm nowhere close to that. And I don't let myself try because I'm scared that I'm going to be bad, which is why we block our own creativity. The fear of failure and the fear of ridicule and looking stupid. I've always wanted to be an actor. I did theater for 8 years when I was younger. That brought me so much joy. I loved stepping into a character's role and shifting the way I was thinking and really becoming them. And when I moved to the US, I stopped doing it. I think the first excuse that I give myself, and I'm gonna say excuse because I think it was an excuse, was that because it was a new language, I didn't know how to act anymore because my training was in French, which now I think is bullshit because I think in English. But that was my first thing, and little by little I just built up the excuses until I didn't have the balls anymore. And I think that's one of the things that I want to do is take acting classes and give it a shot. I live in Los Angeles. Like, what a better time in my life and what a better location to tap into that and give it a shot. Even if I'm a bad actor, like, try it, Noah. An architect or an interior designer. I mean, I love interior design, and I have more about this one later, but I always wanted to be an architect. I would draw perspective and furniture, and I learned doing that by myself because I was so interested about it. And yeah, so that's one of the lives. Another one is lawyer. I think I was just interested in like the bad bitch behavior. Corporate ladder baddie, I wrote, like just like climbing the corporate ladder and becoming a partner or like some exec and just doing that. Another one is no job, living on an island. Like, just let me be a beach boy and I'll hang out with the monkeys and hunt and do all that stuff. Maybe not hunt. I'll be a gatherer. Another one is traveling the world with no home. Just being a nomad and traveling around the world and getting to know other cultures and foods and experiences and people. I would have loved to do that. And then the last one, married with kids, living in a remote location, like a farm or a forest, and just like giving my all to my family and that being my entire life. And looking back at these things, each one of these lives would probably not feel fulfilling. They're just dreams that I have in my head, but I'm sure if I was married with kids living in a remote location, I would have urges to be social, go out, go to a concert, go to a movie. But it's just interesting to see what comes out when I tell myself like, okay, if I had another life, forget about everything here, what would I be doing? Okay, and I think the last thing is the artist day. Every week you're prompted to go on an artist day. It's basically you taking yourself on a solo day to do something that you want to do. The word artist day, I think, spooked me out a little bit at first because I was like, do I have to sit down and paint? Like, I don't necessarily want to do that. But it's broader than that. It's more like remove all expectations and all barriers. What do you want to do? So I started a list. I'll keep working on that list to add for the next 12 weeks where I can like keep doing them. A solo trip, like a road trip somewhere and just maybe renting a cabin and like being on my own, meditating or doing whatever I want. Another one was paint by number. I used to love paint by number when I was a kid. Like, you know, those drawings are black and white and with numbers, and then you have paint that is numbered and you like color it. Anyway, I think it's like my version of painting. I don't really want to paint. Like, I do have the belief that I'm not talented enough to paint and I should squash that, but I'm also not super drawn to painting. Pottery should be one. I love pottery. I only did it once, but I loved it. I'm adding it. Another one was going to a jazz night by myself because I love jazz and I should try doing it on my own. I did none of those because my artist date came up so naturally, and I don't know if it's as a direct result of doing this week's work. I think it kind of is, but it feels like it just came on its own. One of my imaginary lives and the things that I wanted to do as a kid was being an architect. And all these things came back in my head. Like last week, if you had asked me that, I wouldn't have remembered that part of me. Like the fact that I was so into architecture and that I did so much of that in my childhood. The second my parents let me decorate my room, it was over. I would like make sketches of the entire room in perspective And with my current furniture, I would move it out, like drawings of it moved out, and then I would move the furniture around to match my plan. Like I would do multiple plans. And now that I am able to put words onto it, I think it's less interior design and less architecture. It's more space planning that I find really interesting. Like, how does the space work well with your habits and what you do with your space and feeling good in your space? But this week, I was looking at houses on Zillow, and I am in no position to purchase a house right now. Like, that's not in the budget. But I started looking at houses, and I got an alert for a house that it's not a beautiful home. It's obviously a very old home. I think it was from the 40s or 50s, but it's in a neighborhood that I love. The address was 1555. The address is 1555, and that used to be my favorite angel number. Now it's 777, but it used to be 555. It just looked interesting. So I went out there and I saw the house from the outside. It's empty, so I peeked through the windows and I saw the backyard, and I just, like, my brain just started exploding with ideas and picturing myself in it with Crash in the backyard. I just was so interested in it that I emailed the listing agent, and I scheduled a tour for that same day. I made up a little bit of a white lie, and it was kind of funny to like cosplay. Maybe that was my acting of the week. And I went inside and saw everything. The floor plan is messed up, but the foundations of the home are so good, and there's so much light, and it's huge, and the backyard has so much potential, and there's even a unit in the back of the backyard that you could turn into an ADU or like an apartment. It could be such a cool project. And so I went home and I had the agent send me the floor plan just to like better understand it. I erased all the walls inside the home, and I spent an entire night building different floor plans, and I had so much fun. Like, I had more fun than I've had doing something creative than I can remember. And then I remembered that's something that I used to do with my mom as a kid, and I completely forgot that I used to do that with my mom. Growing up, my parents would purchase a house or a plot of land, and then they would have the house demolished and start from scratch, blank canvas. And then my mom would draw out plans and work with an architect to build a house from scratch. That was always the coolest thing, and she let me in on the process. My mom and I would scout houses around our neighborhood or plots of land, and then we'd go on the city's website to get a bird's eye view of the plot of land. Like, you can get the cadastre, I don't know how to say it in English, but you get basically the dimensions of the plot of land. And then we would take that, and we both had a giant notebook. Like, she bought me the same one as her, and we would draw the lot with the exact dimensions, like to scale. And then we would spend the entire afternoon drawing houses, like floor plans, to see if it had potential. Because there are guidelines, like you can't build on above a certain percentage of the land in France. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but there are a bunch of rules. And then we would compare plans, share ideas, and she'd be like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And I was so young, like I was a kid. To me, it was just play. It's just such a beautiful creative memory in my head that I didn't even remember I had. And these are also huge moments for my creative self-worth, because hearing my mom, who had done projects in the past and had worked with architects, and she was my mom, like I had her on such a pedestal and I admired her so much, hearing her be like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And I always remember one of the houses that she built, there was like a level problem. Like, the whole plot of land was on a slope, and so the question was, do we just level it out? But there were some problems with it because there were trees on both sides that they wanted to keep. And I came up with the idea of having 2 tiers. I didn't come up with it, like I didn't make that up, but I brought the idea to the table. And so the house would be on the bottom tier, and then the backyard was elevated, and you'd have like a little wall and staircase. And she did it. Like, I can't even put into words what that meant to me, because that process didn't stop there. We would do it together, then she would go to the architect with it, get the like technical aspect of it put together with them, and then she would source all the materials, all the furniture, and then contractors. Like, we would build the house, and we would go check on the house every week and see the progress and see if we needed to adjust certain things. And it was just so cool. The feeling of walking into that house that was like half built and seeing my idea come to life, like that tier of the backyard and those steps being built, mind-blowing. And like so validating as a child and as a creative person. Okay, and the last question in the check-in is, were there any issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? And I think the main one I kind of touched upon is gonna be selective memory, or like tapping into these memories that I maybe erased. The term technically is trauma blocking. Basically, when you don't want to remember traumatic experiences, you forget about them. and things just feel a lot clearer and more happy and better when you don't have those scary moments or experiences. But at the same time, it is a hindrance in your growth and in unleashing who you're meant to be because you're not seeing the full picture. So I think that's going to be a challenge for me, working through that selective memory. But I think the morning pages are so damn impactful in that because the writing on paper, and I do feel like writing on paper is so painful. Like that's also going to be an issue for me because every morning I start writing and I'm like, my hand hurts. I don't want to do this. Like I'd rather type it out. The journaling part is fine. It's just the handwriting that's annoying. But I do feel like the handwriting part is also something that brings things out more than if I was typing on my computer. These morning pages are so impactful in helping me untangle some of the anxieties that I have. One of these anxieties is not being able to have a future, to sustain myself in the future. And that in the present blocks me from tapping into my creativity because if I'm too creative now and too risky, then I'm not going to have money in the future to sustain myself and I'm going to end up alone or unable to sustain myself. I won't have the life that I want to have when I'm older. And then it's also helpful in helping me look at my successes and what I've accomplished in the past because being an overworker, you kind of keep going. There's always a next goal, a next project, something else, and you kind of brush over your success and whatever you've done in the past. And journaling has allowed me to be like, wait, 5 years ago I would have dreamt of having a business. Like I have a whole brand, Sunny Days, that I'm staring at my inventory right now. I have a brand that I built from scratch and I created products that people purchase and feel confident in. Like that's insane. I create content on social media that brings people joy or inspiration or entertainment. I have a dog, a beautiful dog that I love and that I've always dreamt of having. I have beautiful friends, an amazing family. I have so many things that I should be grateful for and that I should celebrate in myself, but of course, you take things for granted. So I think this exercise is really helpful in reminding me to look at myself and be like, you did that, bitch. You did that. Week 1 done. I'm really excited for week 2. Week 2 is about recovering a sense of identity. That's terrifying, but I'm excited for it. All right, I'll check back in next week. Bye.